Have you ever wondered what it truly means to be a good neighbor? Is it just about the people who live next door, or is it something more? Our story begins on a sun-drenched road winding through the ancient hills of Judea, a path known for its beauty, but also for its hidden dangers. A man, a merchant by trade, was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho. He was a good man, hard-working, with a family waiting for him at home. The sun was warm on his back, and the journey, though long, felt promising. He carried with him goods to sell, and the earnings from his last trip, a small fortune tucked away safely. Little did he know, his journey was being watched. From behind the rocky outcrops, shadowy figures emerged. They were robbers, their faces hardened by a life of crime. They descended upon the lone traveler with brutal speed. He tried to fight back, to protect what was his, but he was outnumbered. They beat him, stripped him of his valuables, even his clothes, and left him for dead on the side of the road, bleeding and broken under the harsh sun. Sometime later, the sound of footsteps approached. The injured man, barely conscious, managed to lift his head. It was a priest, a man of God, making his way down the same road. "Help," the merchant whispered, his voice a dry rasp. The priest saw him. He saw the blood, the wounds, the desperation in the man's eyes. But he hesitated. He was on his way to the temple for important duties. Getting involved would make him ceremonially unclean. It was a risk, a delay. So, with a conflicted heart, he crossed to the other side of the road and continued on his way, leaving the man to his fate. The hope that had flickered in the merchant's heart began to die. A while later, another set of footsteps. This time, it was a Levite, another respected religious figure, an assistant at the temple. He, too, saw the man lying in a pool of his own blood. He walked over, looked down at the pathetic figure, and perhaps felt a brief pang of pity. But fear and inconvenience quickly took over. What if the robbers were still nearby? What if this was a trap? He, too, made a choice. He crossed the road and hurried past, disappearing down the path. The injured man was now utterly alone, his breathing shallow, the world fading to black. Was this how his story would end? Just as all hope seemed lost, a third traveler appeared. But this one was different. He was a Samaritan. Now, you have to understand, Samaritans and Jews in those days were bitter enemies. They despised each other, a hatred that had simmered for centuries. They wouldn't even speak to one another, let alone help each other. The injured man, being a Jew, would have expected nothing from the Samaritan, perhaps a curse, or worse, to be ignored completely. But the Samaritan didn't see an enemy, he saw a human being in agony. When he saw the broken man on the roadside, his heart was filled not with hatred, but with deep compassion. He immediately stopped his journey. He dismounted from his donkey and knelt beside the wounded man, ignoring the dirt and the blood. He didn't just look, he acted. He took out his own flask of oil and wine, precious supplies for his journey, and gently cleaned the man's wounds, the wine acting as an antiseptic and the oil as a soothing balm. He then tore strips from his own cloak to bandage the man's injuries, a personal sacrifice. The merchant, drifting in and out of consciousness, could feel the gentle hands working on him, a kindness he never would have expected. But the Samaritan's help didn't stop there. The man was too weak to walk. So, with great effort, the Samaritan lifted the heavier man onto his own donkey, the animal he relied upon for his own journey. He then began to walk alongside, supporting the injured man, slowly and carefully leading the donkey down the treacherous road. He didn't just offer a moment of help, he took full responsibility for this stranger's life. As dusk began to fall, they arrived at a small inn, a safe haven for weary travelers. The Samaritan explained the situation to the innkeeper and helped the wounded man into a room. He didn't just drop him off and leave. He stayed with him all through the night, watching over him, making sure his fever didn't rise, changing his bandages, and giving him water. He nursed a man who, on any other day, would have been his sworn enemy. The next morning, the injured man was stable, but still very weak. The Samaritan knew he had to continue his own journey, but he couldn't abandon the man he had saved. He went to the innkeeper and took out his own money purse. He handed him 2 silver coins, a significant amount of money, enough for several weeks of lodging and care. "Look after him," the Samaritan said to the innkeeper. "Whatever more you spend, when I return, I will repay you." He didn't just pay for the care. He opened a line of credit, promising to cover any and all future expenses. He was guaranteeing this stranger's complete recovery, a stranger whose name he didn't even know. With that promise, the Samaritan finally continued on his journey, leaving behind a legacy of incredible kindness. He asked for no thanks, no reward, no recognition. He simply saw a need and met it, crossing every social, religious, and cultural boundary of his day to do what was right. So, who was the real neighbor to the man who fell among robbers? Was it the priest who was too busy, the Levite who was too scared, or the Samaritan who was supposed to be an enemy? The story isn't just about a kind person, it's a challenge to all of us. It asks us to look beyond our own groups, our own comfort zones, our own prejudices. True compassion doesn't have borders. A neighbor isn't just someone who lives near you or thinks like you. A neighbor is anyone who needs your help and anyone who is willing to give it. This ancient story still echoes today, reminding us that the greatest acts of humanity often come from the most unexpected places. It's a call to action, to have a heart that sees suffering, hands that are willing to help, and a spirit that chooses love over hate every single time. So the next time you see someone in need, ask yourself, will I cross the road or will I cross the divide? The choice is always ours. Thanks for watching.